Good morning, everyone. It's 11:30, so let's go ahead and get started. There's plenty of seats. All right. First up today, we have Mike Miguel, Assistant Division Chief of CARB's Monitoring and Laboratory Division, and he's going to be sharing about the PQAO updates. And then we're going to have Andrea McStalker, Air Pollution Specialist in CARB's Quality Management section, sharing a tour of CARB's updated website. So everyone, please welcome Mike.
All right, thank you, Grace. It's a pleasure to be here again. I can't believe this is the 5th PQAO training event that we've put on. It's great to see folks. How many folks out here have been to all 5 training events? Wow, good. Who's brand new to this training? Because oh my God, you guys outnumber the veterans, which is good. I heard there's a lot of turnover going at the districts. When I was talking to EPA about what we should include, we got to include the information that for the new people. And it's always a balance. We want to keep this training fresh. We don't want to kind of redo the same things over and over, but we also want to hit those things that we continually see through the TSA process. Before we get started in some of the PQAO updates, I have to give some thank yous because this kind of event doesn't just happen. First, if my speakers could stand up. Where's any speakers in the room? Well done. It takes a lot of effort. Public speaking is not some people's favorite thing to do, but these folks, volunteered to share some critical information, and I hope you got value. Please take a moment when you run into them to the hallways to say thank you. I got to have my the quality management section staff stand up, or not the quality management staff, the CAC committee stand up. Where's the CAC committee? These folks are made up of EPA, district, and ARB staff. Reach out to these folks. It's open. Each time we do a solicitation to help us develop the curriculum, what we think would be of value to you guys. You saw some presentations on wildfires, sensors, the latest information. We want to include that, but we don't want to forget about what our roots are, the regulatory air monitoring. So these folks really put their heads to the grindstone and met 5 or 6 times to really develop this curriculum. So kudos to them. I got to have some key staff from the quality management section. Leah, Andrea, and Kyle. Could you guys stand up? These guys helped our chief here. These guys really were her right-hand people in getting things done, logistics, working with the vendor. They were here working late hours. They went above and beyond. And without them, this wouldn't have happened. And that leads us to Grace. Grace, stand up. We got everybody give Grace a big round of applause. When Grace joined us a few years ago, I knew she was going to be a natural at leading this event. So I told Patrick when we hired her, I want to dump this on her. She took it by the horns and really shined, and she did a great job. This venue couldn't have been better. I almost want to say this is probably the best venue we've been at so far. So it doesn't happen without Grace taking the lead here. So thank you, Grace. Finally, I want to talk about some personnel changes. I was lucky to become Assistant Division Chief, Monitoring Laboratory Division. So my successor, Manisha Singh, has everybody, Manisha, stand up. She's the new branch chief of the Quality Management Branch, so she will be overseeing all of the auditing activities as well as PQA oversight going forward. So thank you, Manisha. We're very lucky to have her. She brings a strong background in sensors, quality assurance, and reg development, so it's a perfect fit for the quality management team. We also have Greg Galani. Greg, stand up. Has anybody noticed he has a smile from ear to ear? Well, we just formally announced the fact that, what was it, Tuesday? He's the new manager of the quality management section. So, he actually, this is his second stint. He was one of the founding members of the quality management section when we got things started to oversee the PQA activity. So he's excited to come back and lead this team. So welcome, Greg. If you haven't had a chance, please reach out to them because they're going to be your main contacts going forward with regards to any quality assurance and PQA activities. All right, let's get into my updates. The nice thing is I attended as many of the presentations as possible, and the things I'm going to talk about today were covered, a lot of them were covered. But I wanted to leave you with a lasting impression of these are the things that we're seeing continually when we visit your districts or EPA is highlighted in their TSA. How many of you have been involved in a TSA? Really? Not everybody? Okay, who hasn't been involved in a TSA? Okay, Greg, make sure you catch all those hands. We want to make sure that they get their due diligence there. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we found throughout the recent TSAs. I'm going to talk about the technical system audit. You had a great training by Lena Kangura. She talked about the process for a TSA. I'm going to talk more about some of the findings, talk about some of the major accomplishments we've had over the last couple of years, wrap it up with an overview of some roles and responsibilities, and then turn it over to Andrea for a web tour. So in 2018, we had a TSA by EPA. They're done every 3 years, you know that. But before we get into some of these findings, I wanted to mention that this is the third TSA where we actually document it through a corrective action process. In 2011, that was the first year we did that. We had over 100 findings between ARB and the 3 districts that were audited. Today, we still have 8 of those findings, 8 years later, still trying to resolve them. The nice thing is, I got great news earlier in this week. EPA conditionally approved our final QAP, the PM QAP. So that will wrap up, I believe, 7 of those 8. And the last one is a site move, which is a nightmare in terms of logistics, moving a site down to Calexico. I believe by the end of the year, 2011 is going to be off the books. So good news. In 2015, we had another audit by EPA. I begged and pleaded, don't do another audit until I wrap up all the 2011 findings, but nope, I was lucky enough we get another one. But the good news is between us and the districts, we had just under 80 findings. Not bad, we had an improvement. Those findings typically resolved, of those findings, 28 of them are still unresolved, mainly SOPs, data validation processes, and so forth. We believe with the training plan that Kathy highlighted earlier, some of the SOP updates that we've just completed, we're going to wipe off a lot of those off the books in the coming weeks and months. And that leads us to 2018. And EPA, even though it's not final, I haven't even seen the draft, they left me with some tidbits of things to share with you that they're finding throughout the districts. And we wanted to leave these with you so you can take them back to your organizations and be proactive in addressing these. The first being zero span and 1-point QC checks. Zero checks. We had some trainings in the past where San Diego, I believe, San Luis Obispo, CARB, all shared with you how we verify the quality of our zero error. Some agencies are still not doing that. We need to get processes in place so that we can validate the quality of the zero error we're using when we conduct calibrations. Span and QC checks. talking about the range, the concentrations that we're using when we do those checks. For example, ozone. Some agencies are still doing their checks at 100 ppb. That needs to be more in the range of where you see your typical ambient concentrations. We need to get those lower. You saw some presentations earlier in the week talking about that, and as well as span checks. We talked about frequency of those checks, making sure that we do them once every 2 weeks, if not even more frequent. If we're not doing that, it's a critical criteria. Data could be invalidated. So we need to focus on that. This was a new one to me. First time I've had this finding and actually even thought about it. How many of you out there are verifying your temperature sensors inside your shelters, not your ambient ones? Well, good. Quite a few of you are. This was a finding with some of the recent audits that some agencies are not doing that. So we need to put in place some mechanisms to validate and verify the temperature probes that we use in our shelters. Use of the CAN process. I kind of mentioned this, I chimed in before Andrea cut me off and said I had my quota of questions. I talked about the CAN process, and I think it's people don't like to kind of point the finger at themselves when something goes wrong. Whether it's your station that is down for a reason, instrument maintenance wasn't performed, you didn't do your QC checks, you don't want to tell your manager that. We need to have a change in culture so that we utilize this corrective action process so we get that documented. It's really critical. It helps salvage data. We're going through a process right now with an agency, and we're using every bit of information we can to help salvage data. We're looking at logbooks, we're digging into the memory systems of the instruments to kind of help try to tease out some of the information. So using the CAN process to help document is really critical. We need to have a change in culture that we have open communication, working with your liaisons, collaboration, to share what we know so that we don't make those mistakes and we can move forward. And finally, training. We had a great presentation by Kathy Gill on the training plan. It's the first time, it's one of the best documents I've read as a quality assurance manager in a long time. It really lays out how we onboard and do continual training for our staff to make sure they're up to date on SOPs. You know, a lot of folks say, yeah, I've got an SOP, but how many of you actually review it on an annual basis to make sure you're following what's stated in that SOP? Show of hands. How many people really read their SOPs on a frequent basis? A few. And that's what we need to get across, is we need to continually review our quality management plans, our quality assurance project plans, to make sure they emulate what we're doing in the field. In addition to the EPA TSA, CARB is required to do TSAs. We've done 5 over the last couple years. Don Hammond and Lena, they talked about how they've put together a team, and they've done a great job. Our goal, we have to audit the remaining agencies within our PQAO on an every 6-year schedule. We're about doing that, about to meet that with our 2019 audits, Northern Sonoma and Mendocino. We're wrapping up the report with Northern Sonoma and Mendocino. We kick off in September. But some of the common findings in what we're seeing revolve around SOPs, no training plans, documents, logbooks not properly filled out, QC checks. Can anybody tell me what the common theme there is? Documents, paperwork, right? Nobody wants to do the paperwork. That's the boring stuff. We want to keep our instruments, our stations operating, get our data into AQS. I'll get to that paperwork later. But when a problem comes up, we rely on that paperwork and, oh, I didn't get to it. We got to focus on making sure that we get our documents in place. The nice thing is that the trend of the TSAs that EPA has been doing, the findings have been coming down, but we're getting to that what I'll call the low-hanging fruit, the things that if we can get that resolved, we're going to be really looking good, and EPA is going to maybe, we don't have to see you for another 5 or 6 years, right? So let's focus on some of those common findings and take a proactive approach. Take those back to your agencies and get them resolved. Lena talked about the EPA questionnaire. If you haven't been involved in a TSA, it's a new questionnaire. It's more streamlined. It's still quite voluminous. Topics are grouped together so you don't have to enter same information multiple times. It reflects current regulations, so take the time to review that, especially if you have a TSA coming up. As I mentioned, we had good news earlier this week. CARB finally completed their QAPs, and they were approved by EPA. So that now puts more work on you folks. As part of our PQAO, you need to adopt our QAP, and both for PM and gaseous, and look to create some addenda that reflects what your agencies do. There's certain sections in each of those documents that you will need to update to reflect what you do. So we will be making those available online, and your liaisons will be reaching out to you. Our goal is to have those completed by the end of this year. Our QMP was recently updated as well. It's amazing how fast that comes. That was the first document we did, and as we started working on the QAPs, the QMP became outdated. So you can see how it snowballs. So that was just recently updated. It was administrative. Most of it was organizational structure. We've had a lot of changes. We updated web links, and we'll show you some of those web pages later on. Carl Tupper mentioned this in his presentation. These are 2 points in the QAP that were significant updates, and you need to be aware of these if you haven't made those changes. The 1-point QC checks and the criteria we're using were lowered and they're critical criteria. If you don't meet that, data need to be invalidated with a null code. So make sure you're aware of that and you're using, again, the right concentrations. And then the calibration criteria is now more stringent. All points have to be less than or plus or minus 2.1% across the linear range. So 2 points to make sure that you're familiar with. Take the time to read those. This is the table of contents from our QAP. I've highlighted in yellow those areas that will require addenda updates from your agencies. They're going to be specific to you and what you do in your agencies. So these presentations, I believe, are going to be made online. Take a look at those when you read through our QAPs to make sure that you create addenda that addresses these sections. So some success stories. Has anybody taken the time to review our data quality report that we produce? A few. It is quite a lot of information, but it's the only document from a PQAO perspective that we summarize all of the quality assurance information that is generated. The reason it's 2017 is you guys certify by May 1st of the following year, and it takes us 6 months to summarize all that information. So in a nutshell, one of the big successes as a PQAO, we had greater than 95% data capture rate throughout all the agencies. That for all pollutants. That's amazing. That's a job well done. You ought to be proud of that. A few years ago, it was required that we start submitting our flow verifications. It was a slow process. In 2016, it was 75%. In 2017, 97%. So that was quickly adopted by districts, getting that QC information into the data quality report. Believe it or not, we met our PM co-location requirement in 2017. It's the first year we've met it in a long time. The reason that's such a struggle to meet is there's constant changes in the network. Folks going from FRM or filter-based to continuous, shutting instrument down, using new technologies. Whenever there's a change to that type of instrument, we have to make sure that the co-location requirement of 15% of each method code. So I really stress on you, when you're considering changing out instruments, shutting something down, let us know, because it could impact our co-location requirement. One of the questions I always ask when I see this report is, this is great, you're summarizing everything at the PQAO level, and it includes the 4 PQAOs in California against the national average for all the PQAOs. And California does very well. But the question that comes up is, well, what does that mean to me and the sites I operate, right? You all want to know, what do I need to do better? So we added an appendix in this report that shows the issues that came up for each of the air monitoring sites, where a particular site didn't meet data capture, didn't meet their audit requirements, or their QC information. The bad news is we went from 40 issues in 2016 to 70 issues in 2017. So take some time to look at this report, identify what those maybe systemic issues may be in your arena, and hopefully we can get that number lower when we start. I know HIN has already started planning on the 2018 report. So roles and responsibilities, consistent and reliable field operations. What I mean by that is really know what your network is set up to do. We've had a lot of conversations about, when I reach out and talk to a lot of you folks, the big comment back to me is, we're a small agency. We don't have the resources to do that. We need to know what your networks look like. Do you exceed the minimum monitoring requirements? Earlier on in this week, we saw a presentation where folks were going above and beyond the minimum monitoring. Do you have to do FEM, FRM monitoring? Or maybe can we deploy sensors to supplement our regulatory monitors? Because I know a lot of you, the public wants to know, right? But does it have to be an FRM where it has all of these associated requirements? Maybe low-cost sensors is an avenue. So know your networks. I want to put a huge thanks out to Santa Barbara. We went round and round. They shut some sites down. We were able to move some of our sites over to their operations, which freed up CARB resources to really focus on other areas. We're all battling that resource issue. So we're continuing on. Santa Barbara wasn't the first. I know North Coast combined a couple sites, full sites into one. A lot of districts have been recently asking about moving to continuous samplers. So there's a lot of changes and opportunities to really take advantage of our limited resources. That kind of ties into make sure you coordinate all those site changes through us and my team here. They need to know, the liaisons need to know when you're planning changes. The CAPCOA air monitoring, is everybody participating in those calls? Let's show of hands. These are great calls. Take this as an opportunity to participate. Each year that we tried to add a little bit more so that there's value to them. This last year, Kate Hogue, kudos to her. She's added these 10 to 20 minute informational items, giving updates. Staff are giving updates on unique situations in their districts or special studies that they're doing. We're trying to keep that fresh, that everybody's involved. We usually average probably about 20 agencies. I'd like to see everybody participate in those calls. It's a great forum. The Google users group that Carl set up was born out of that. A lot of good opportunities to interact with your colleagues. And finally, this is a big one in the TSA that we've been finding is it's in your roles and responsibilities document to go into AQS on a quarterly basis and verify that the data that's been uploaded is what you intended to upload. Is everybody doing that? A few? We need everybody to be doing that. I know there's 9 or 10 districts that CARB uploads air monitoring data for, but all we do is upload it for you, right, Craig? We don't validate it. We don't check it. We do a service, we update it. So the expectation is if we upload your data for you, you need to go in and print those AMP reports and make sure that the data that's been uploaded is what you intended for us to do, okay? So, hopefully I've left you with some tidbits to take back to your agencies to be proactive. I'm going to turn it over to Andrea. She's going to run through the QA webpage and show you where some critical information can be found.
Okay, hi everyone. It's good to see that there's a lot of new people here because I want to go through a couple things on our website that I think are really great resources. And if you haven't been to our website yet, then I think you'll really get a lot of use out of this. For the people who use our website a lot, you'll notice that it's changed a little bit in the last 9 months or so. CARB has moved to sort of a different system so that when you go to the web page, it shows up very nicely on your mobile device. And because of that, we've gotten rid of the station operator web page. So if you start out at our main web page here, you can scroll down and click on Measuring Air Quality. And that'll take you to a page where it breaks it out. You can, read a little bit about AB 617. You can see a map. And if you scroll down a little bit further, you see quality assurance. And you can get to it that way. Now, if you don't remember any of that or just don't want to click all those times, what I do is I just go up here and I search for quality assurance, and the web page pops up, the very first one. So this is our quality assurance web page, and you can see along the left-hand side here, we have all of the different pages and different categories that should make it pretty easy for you guys to navigate and find what you're looking for. But I want to point out here, right here at the very front is our PQAO District Liaisons contact page. So we really encourage you to reach out to us. And if you don't know who your liaison is, you're going to find out right now. So, Aman, are you here? There's Aman over there. Aman is the district liaison for Mendocino, North Coast, Yolo, Solano, and Ventura. Janine, there she is here in front. Janine has Shasta, Siskiyou, and Tehama. Leah has Imperial and Mojave. I have Eastern Kern, Lake, San Joaquin, and Santa Barbara. Grace has Great Basin, Northern Sonoma, and Placer. And Kyle, there's Kyle. He has Monterey, Northern Sierra, Sacramento, and San Luis Obispo. So please reach out to us if you have any questions, if you need help on anything. That's what we're here for. So next, I think something that you guys might visit a lot is the QM document repository. And here is where you can find, there's all these different tables where we house SOPs from districts in our PQAO as well as some of the other PQAOs. So I'll just give you a little quick look here at what that looks like. So if you need to write an SOP, and please check the repository first to see if there is an SOP that you can go ahead and adopt. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you see something here and you are operating these instruments the same way, please just work with your liaison and you can go ahead and adopt these SOPs. I do want to point out here on this main page, this is the link here. I don't know if you can see it. This is the link here for the, if you want to do an addendum. I know we've talked about having to addend, the QAPs so that it suits your district. This is the document you're going to use. Let's see it downloaded here. It looks like this, and you can work with your liaison, and they can help you, identify sections that you're going to need to addend. Okay, so back to the website. We're going to go back to the main page. And if you keep scrolling down, we have a section on popular resources. And here's where you're going to find, a lot of popular links sections that you might need to go to. One of them I know was mentioned, or not mentioned, but gone over heavily in Leah's SOP breakout, is the checklist that the liaisons use when we're reviewing and approving your SOPs. So please, when you're writing your SOPs, take a look at this and make sure that you've included all of the items on this list, and you can find that here by clicking that link. The next thing I wanted to show you is the data corrective action process. And this page just explains what a CAN is, the CAN process. You can find a link to the CAN SOP and a link to a CAN form if you need to issue a CAN. If you scroll down a little bit farther, there's some information on AQDAs, and most importantly, there is a link down here to the PANDA page, which you should have login information. This is the page that you can go to. Here, I'll show you. You can go here and you can select your district. If you don't know what your password is, please contact your liaison. We can get that for you. And once you get into this PANDA page, it shows you all of the outstanding CANs and AQDAs that your district has. So that's an important resource. And lastly, I wanted to point out we have a link here for training resources. And this is also a very useful page because it has a lot of training that is just all in one place right here. So you can see we have a lot of training. We have some from EPA. We have a lot from CARB. Up here, you can access past PQAO training modules. And, if you click on one of these, it'll go into, you can look at presentations. Some of them have videos. Some of them are just the PDFs. But again, if you're, new to your agency or new to, air monitoring in general, it's really great to go back and be able to watch these presentations. They're very useful. And also, all of the presentations from this PQAO training will be posted online, as well as whatever was videotaped. So all of the general session presentations, and I think the breakout sessions that were here in Ballroom B. So once we get all of that staff from our AV people, I'll go ahead and post that on the website and let you guys know that it's there to review. So there is quite a bit of other information that we have on our website on the quality assurance page. So please just take some time, click around, see what we have. It's quite a bit, and if there's anything that you maybe think is missing and think should be on here, please let me know. And with that, do you have any questions for Mike? Okay, how about questions for me? No? Okay. Then
one thing I want you all to think about, I know it's a couple years away, but believe it or not, in probably about 6 to 10 months, we'll be thinking about PQAO 2021 and when we want to have that. Again, we try to keep this fresh. We don't want it to feel like, God, I went to that last time. It's the same old stuff. So if you guys have some ideas on what we should include, please reach out to us and let us know. One of the areas I think we're going to kind of revisit is the sit-down opportunities to where with the vendors. If you recall, those of you that participated in the original trainings, we had breakout sessions with the vendors where you got to go in and replace a pump or perform diagnostics tests on your instruments. So we sent out questions to you guys is, if you have issues with instruments, bring those, sit down with a vendor, and work through that instrument. I think we're going to go back to that, mainly because there's a lot of new instruments out there that we could probably cover. And one of the original findings from EPA is that we needed to have that one-on-one contact with the vendor so that we're fully trained on station operations. So that's one idea, concept we're looking at. If you all have others, please, again, reach out to us and let us know.